Welcome to Real Estate Real World, where we talk to the movers, shakers, and leaders that are getting it done right now in the real estate industry and beyond. Your host is Marguerite Crespillo, and she started this podcast simply to talk to cool people about what's really happening in this crazy roller coaster ride of real estate. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and stay up to date on the newest stuff by adding yourself to the list at www.realestaterealworld.com. Now your host, Marguerite Crespillo.
Hello everybody, it's Marguerite Crespillo, and it's another wonderful day here I'm actually in Roseville, California, and getting ready to record another fascinating podcast with, I'm going to mess up his name, Billy Ekofo. Oh, I got it. Yay! And I'm going to read his bio, but I think he's such a fascinating man. I've watched him a lot on Facebook and social media, and always inspiring, always kind, always giving great information, giving way, way, way more than he gets back. And I've heard so many good things about him in all the different circles. So I said, I have got to talk to this guy. So here we have Billy Ekofo, and he was born in the United States, but of Congolese origins. Billy's life continues to be marked by his relentless pursuit of excellence and a deep passion for community and social impact. Billy is a trained communication and business professional with over 10 years of combined academic and professional experience from living, studying, and working in Central Africa, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Wow, you've been all over the place.
I try to.
Billy completed his MBA at the College of William and Mary with an emphasis on real estate and entrepreneurship in May 2013 and joined Century 21 Redwood Realty in January of 2014 as an agent. And since 2015 is one of the company's lead managers. Everyone wants to talk about leads, don't they?
Yes.
In addition to real estate, Billy's other passion is Peacebuilding. Love that. Mm-hmm. He currently sits on the board for Pilgrims of Ibelin. How do you say that?
Ibelin,
a U.S.-based nonprofit organization which sponsors several peace-building initiatives in Israel and Palestine. Billy is married to Karen Daly Ekofo, and they have two boys, Liam and Jonathan, and reside in Ashburn, Virginia. I'm going to be in Virginia in a couple weeks. I'm speaking at the Virginia Association of Realtors.
You should stop by and say hello.
I will make it a point to do that. I would love to. It's the Virginia Association of Realtors, but I'm not exactly sure where the event is being held. I want to say it's in Maryland.
Yes.
Is that far from you?
No, it's not that far.
Well, then we'll be sure. I'll figure out, because I'm staying an extra day, too, because I had a couple other people I wanted to see. I have my friend Vinny Apostoli Co and Evangeline are both going to be out there, so I'm going to go visit with them. So
excellent.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So cool. All right. Well, let's chat a little bit. Century 21. What made you decide to get into real estate? Because you've been all over the world. What did you do before you got into real estate?
I was in business school, in graduate school, and so let's see. I graduated in May 2013, and between May 2013 and December 2013, I job search like crazy, right? And so I know I wanted to be in international development because, again, my background and my academic training sort of pushed me in that area. That's what I wanted to do, go around the world, help people in dire situations, work in that kind of field. And I look for work, and DC is very known for being the center for like nonprofits and NGOs, and so it was a strategic move for us to move in the area. But after spending 6+ months looking for full-time work and doing informational interviews and whatnot, nothing was opening up. And at that time, we lived with my in-laws, and so my father-in-law just had this, I guess you can call it epiphany. And he was like, well, I think you ought to consider real estate. And I looked at him and I said, basically, no, I don't want to look at real estate because, I just spent all this money getting an MBA. Why in the world would I, want to be in a profession where your primary living is earned on the commission? Right. At least at that time, that's what I thought real estate was about. And then he kept on saying it, well, the market here is, it's pretty good. I think your personality and, I think you'll make a great realtor. So I was like, okay. And he offered to actually pay for my pre-licensing course. And so I went through the course, learned, got my license in late December 2013. And it was with Long & Foster, a prominent real estate company in the area. But instead of joining Long & Foster, I started trying to look for something else. And I came across, I actually went on Facebook. This is actually pretty funny. And I just made put a comment up there and saying, hey, I'm looking for a broker. If anybody has recommendations, please let me know. And a good friend of mine from college was like, oh, you have to talk to this person. He thought I was looking for an agent to buy a home. And so he connected me to our former broker at that time. She's no longer with the company. She left and got back in the field. But wonderful person. Her name is Karen Cooper. And so I connected with Karen, and I just told her, look, this is, I'm looking to, get in real estate. I'm trying to find a way to provide for my family. Kind of told her my background, and she was basically like, yeah, we'll definitely consider you. And so, and at the time, the brokerage, we did not have an agent training program like we do now. And so they really had to look at me, and see, well, is this guy worth teaching real estate to? Is he worth mentoring? Is he worth, showing the skills, to be a good agent? And they made a decision, right, to, bring me on board as an agent. And so, what started out as basically I did not want to be in the industry. I was really reluctant about joining it. Became a conduit for a lot of things, right? So, I started out as an agent. A year and a half into it, the opportunity came for me to be a weekend lead manager out of one of our offices. And so I did that, and then working with the CMO of our company, Eddie Barenbaum, on some systems, trying to design systems for our agents and, for some of the tools that they used. And it naturally just evolved from that. And so today I serve as one of the company's lead manager, which is great. So
yeah. So what exactly does a lead manager do? Tell me what is it that you do when you're managing leads, so to speak? Because this title is used in a lot of different ways. So
yes, I like to think I'm a glorified matchmaker.
I like that.
Yes, and it's interesting because we have I will say 2 books of business, right? A good portion of our business comes from relocation, right? And so, but then we have our own set book of business as well, essentially Redwood proprietary business. So things, the way we gather leads through marketing, to content that we push, all those inquiries, or just people picking up the phone or reaching us by email. That's the type of prospect that I incubate and I follow up with, and I try to. My job essentially is not only incubation, but also matching them up with an agent that will service them well. And so, the title of glorified matchmaker comes from there because, as someone talks to you, you're trying to have a good conversation with a prospect. The way they talk or the way they, some of the things that they're passionate about kind of put a picture in my head. We have 400 agents, but you have to really be strategic about who to match them with. And so that's where the magic happened, right? And so as the prospect talks and you're like, okay, I know exactly who they will, who will be a good agent for them. And you reach out to that agent, you match them up, and before you know it, you get something like, Billy, how did you know it will work out well? It's like, well, I'm the magician. That's what I do. And so that I love it, right? And so
that's so interesting to me because I think I love the thought of that and the process of it, because I think what happens with most teams, we'll say teams or brokerages, is that those leads come in, and even I'm guilty of this, I just do a round robin. Like whoever picks up the phone first is kind of who gets that lead. And I think that you end up, I'm assuming, I know that we do, burning through a lot of leads because maybe it's not a good match or a good fit. So how do you decide really who to pick? Like, what does that conversation look like? Because if I'm understanding you correctly, you're the first point of contact for a lead. So Sally Smith calls off of a sign at 123 Main Street, and she gets you, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so all those leads that are coming from all the different sources are filtering through you first. You're their first point of contact.
Yes. And so, I established a good relationship with Sally Smith, right? And so, and the goal for me is always to try to set up an appointment. So that's the direct, the faster you get to an appointment, the more, in my experience, the more, the likelihood for converting that lead or that prospect just shoots up tremendously. Because at that time, you set the appointment, they meet with an agent face to face, rapport is built, they go from there. And so that's basically what I do, trying to get an appointment set. And so, pinging the agent that I think, in this criteria, right? Conversion, past conversion, are they able to convert online leads, prospect, is this an area that they're familiar with, right? And so knowledge of the area, availability, all that plays into it. And so Sally Smith inquires, talks to Billy. Billy reaches out to the agent he thinks will service the Sally Smith. And, I was an agent too, so when a prospect comes in, I do my best to internalize, the prospect. It's like, if I'm receiving, that information, right, what sort of things would I love to learn right from the spot? And so as I talk to, and you talk to a lot of people during the day, so, you only have a short amount of window to gather really interesting information. Are they working with an agent, which is a vetting question? No, they're not. Okay, that that's someone that's genuinely looking for help. If they've been looking at homes for a while, yes, or they just started looking. Okay, an agent needs to know those kind of things so they can approach them with a plan or a strategy. And then once the match is made, then everything else is basically follow up and reporting tools and processes set in place for the agent to communicate with me on how they're doing.
So I have a couple questions. First of all, in the follow-up process, so Sally Smith gets matched up with, I don't know, John Ward, and John is the agent, and then they meet with that agent, and then do you continue to follow up with that client? Or at that point, does it now become the agent's responsibility?
It becomes the agent's responsibility. I set the tone, not setting the tone. I don't like to use that kind of imagery, but I'm in the first line. Sally Smith talks to me, hopefully gets a good impression and a good feel about the company and the service that we provide, and then I reassure her that the agent that's going to be working with her, it's a member of my team, a member of my company, and when that match is made, they go and they are off, so to say.
So, to use language of some of the other brokerages, you're essentially like an inside sales type person, right?
Yeah, director of first impression, inside sale.
Yeah,
magician.
They all use different titles. I like the magician and matchmaker ones. Those are my favorite.
It's a love story, right? You're trying to build a love story, and so you're the conduit for the magic to happen, and it doesn't end with the sale. I honestly believe that when a good match happens, there's just continuing benefits from it.
I love that. That's a little tweetable there. That's something to tweet.
Yeah. It's a bit romantic what we do.
It is.
Numbers matters, and I get that, but I think you add a little bit of rose petal into this whole venture, and magic does happen. So.
Oh, I love that. I bet your wife adores you too. You must be very romantic.
You'll need to have it on a podcast, and she's going to tell you the story of how we met.
Oh, I would. Okay, so let's take it to the numbers sense then, right? Because people want to know the numbers, and I'm a numbers kind of gal. So how does that work with numbers? Like, do you keep track of? Obviously, I'm sure you keep track of how many leads are generated and how many you convert into appointments. What do those kind of numbers look like for you? Like, how many leads are generated in a month, and do you know what your conversion rate is for appointments? And then, do you also track how many of those appointments actually close?
Yes, we have to track everything. I will say, just to give you a general idea, let's say 3 leads come in, right? And so out of 3 leads right now, we are on track in closing 1, so about 33%.
That's a great conversion rate.
Well, we always shoot for bigger, right? And so, and we also track, and the way we do it, we have several portals to which leads come in, and so all those, we track leads according to the portals and the conversion rate according to portals as well. And so, I will say for about 5 leads altogether coming, we're about 1.5 to 2 conversion. And so, and this is based on appointments, right? So, 5 leads come in, you have about 3 appointments set, you convert, 2 will close. Yeah. And so, everybody's going to have its own sets of numbers, in terms of how well they're doing, depending on where the source of the leads comes from. And so for us, that's what we use to track them.
So some of the numbers that I talk a lot about in a lot of the training and stuff that I do is the numbers that I've seen is if a lead comes from advertising, meaning internet-based or just general ads that are ran, the conversion is typically 100 to 1, meaning 100 leads from internet and advertising, you'll get 1 deal that'll close. If it's from a business source, like you guys have relocation people, so that skews the numbers. If it's from a business source, like a B&I group or a LaTip or your business associates or affiliates or things like that, the conversion is typically 10 to 1. If it's database, if it's a past client, personal friend, sphere of influence, things like that, it's a 3 to 1 conversion. And so I'm always preaching work on your database, right? The conversion rate is higher. Now, if you take all that, on average, a conversion rate is, if you take all of it combined, say 100 leads from advertising, your business leads, your sphere, the conversion is typically about 10%. And honestly, I think the conversion rate, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the conversion rates are so low because most people don't have a you. They don't have a lead manager, a matchmaker, somebody who's making those calls, meaning a lot of the internet leads, I think, and advertising leads either go unanswered, unfollowed up on, right? Something, they're not following up on them.
I think you're pretty much on par with what I've been seeing. And so, there's always great strength in a referral that's been already vetted.
Of course.
Right? Which is, where your SOI comes into play. Someone comes to you and say, I have a friend that's looking to buy, this is what they're looking for, I would like for you to help. Like that to me is an immediate conversion.
Exactly.
Unless the friend decides for some odd reasons not to buy a home anymore, then there's that, which does happen.
Right.
But generally speaking, it's very much guaranteed conversion. Internet leads, in my opinion, are a lot difficult to convert because, those people are not looking to get married right away.
They're still on Match.com. They're just looking.
That's it. They found this property and it looks interesting, and they haven't thought about an agent. They haven't thought about financing most of the time. They're just looking to see that home. Hence the idea of appointments, right? And so if you have, if the goal is to trying to convert them, meeting them, setting an appointment, and having that being the start of the process, at least you're 50% there.
Right.
So, okay, I met them, we shook hands, they toured the home, I asked them what they wanted or what they liked about the home, and they told me exactly. You have all that data that you capture. Then the follow-up becomes a bit natural from that point because, you have a point of reference. And that's where I think, we can certainly work on increasing the conversion rate with internet leads. And I think the mistake that people make, it's, they see them as immediate conversions, right? And so, oh my gosh, if I get to them faster, I can convert them right away. Well, that's not really the case because that's a different animal. You have to really, you have to, the face-to-face is important, right? The moment you meet them, the moment you shake hands and you see them and you get the feel about the home or any other home you visit that day, that takes, it's a step towards conversion, right? And so, you can consider that a conversion itself. It's like, okay, I went from just, getting the info about a person to meeting them face-to-face. So that's first conversion. Then where do we go from there? We actually saw a bunch of homes. Okay, that's I took them on a tour of 3 homes. That's second sets of conversion. They really like this home. We put in a contract. They want to write a contract on it. Okay, third. And then you kind of move from that standpoint. And it's not immediate, right? And so I think, for people involved in lead gen, and we know that, as you work with leads, or prospects, as I like to call them, you see that being played out. And so I don't subscribe to the idea that, and then let me backtrack. I think the reason why people, brokerages and agents don't really pay attention to online leads is because it's not
right now.
It's not the same feel as a good sphere of influence, prospect, right? The referral you get from your friends and family, it's pretty much a guaranteed transaction, one that comes from, the portals that we all like. You have to work a little bit harder at them. So,
but what I find interesting, though, is you confirm what I say all the time about the fact that, those are the best quality leads. It's guaranteed business in a lot of ways. But very few agents actually follow up with and maintain. Many don't even have a database. Then They don't follow up with the database. They don't maintain it. They don't do any of that. I mean, honestly, the numbers are astronomical at how few do that. But and then they're doing all this advertising and, all this different stuff to generate business, but then they're not following up with that. So what do you think those issues and challenges are? Is it fear of the phone? Is it, I guess that's kind of my question, is why don't agents follow through more with their database? And then a lot are not even following up with the leads they're generating. You're an anomaly in that situation, in that as the people at your company, you're obviously brilliant in having someone like you, but that's not very normal for most brokerages. It maybe for a team, it might be, but even teams are not really doing it very well.
I think it's going back to the idea of instant, that gratifying prospect. Online leads are not gratifying in the sense that, I should say, very few of them will give you that gratification, right? So, you have to approach them from that perspective. Like, this is not someone that's looking, again, going back to the whole marriage, similarity. Like, this, I need to be dating this person. I need to show this person value, and the easiest way to do that is to be able to meet them face to face, trying to get in front of them and say, look, I'm here to assist you. They're just looking to inquire on the home, right? You're trying to sell them everything about your brokerage right there. That's just not going to work. And so, they want to see the home in the corner of, Billy Street, and set an appointment to see the home on the corner of Billy Street. As you're setting the appointment, you can find some quick information. Are you already working with an agent? Well, no, we're not. Okay, good. Have you been looking are you interested in other homes in the area? Sometimes they will say, as a matter of fact, there's one in the corner and then another one 2 streets over. That to me is a good indication that these people are actively looking.
Right.
If they say we're just interested in this one home, again, it might take you a while to convert them because they're only looking at one home right now, but it's still worth following up with. And so just having that mindset, it's like, that makes a lot of difference. And also, to go back to your question, I think people are just scared of talking to people they don't know. Right? So, and just being willing to do that. I'm not. I have to do that. And you can take that to different directions. If you're doing recruiting for a brokerage, you have to talk to all kinds of agents. You have to be out there and, put the value proposition of your company in front of other people, right? And so to me, it's the same thing with, prospects. This is someone that's looking, it's easier to send information behind a keyboard. And,
right.
It takes another level of confidence to be in front of a person and say, hi, I'm from Century 21 Redwood Realty. I'm here to property. Let's talk. That's you have to build that part out. And so
another thing that I think, there's that famous saying that the fortune is in the follow-up, right? And And yet very, very few actually do the follow-up, or they'll call one time and never follow up again. How many times on average do you find that you're having to call and call and call? And when do you stop calling?
It takes about, I would say, a good 45 to 60 days to work an online lead, in my opinion. And again, the first call, like once a lead comes in, a prospect comes in, there's the email that goes out, there's the call, right? This is Billy from Century 21 Redwood Realty. Inquire about this home. Love to set an appointment. Let me know if you want to, when you're available. Love to have one of our agents meet with you, provided that an agent's not already representing you. And then there's the text that goes out as well. And so I have 3 mediums of communications going, within 5 minutes altogether. And so the idea behind it is, okay, if I can't get them on the phone, if I'm able to get them via text, at least I'm having a conversation. Or, if none of them, one of them should work, right? And so, and then we have built-in programs, through our CRM that I use, with different, it goes through, you just follow the plan. It's like, okay, we contacted them on day number 1, and then number 3, if you haven't got any response yet, you call, or you send a text, or send a follow-up email just to say, hey, this is Billy again, checking in to see if you got whatever, and just follow the prompt, basically. And then if you don't, 45 days after following the program, and if you don't get something, at least a sign of life, or even after 60 days, like that to me, it's, okay, there's still somebody we can work with, but chances are, either
they're not right now.
Right. Yeah. And so, and then at that point, you move from trying to get them to an appointment to continuing to providing values, right? And so trying to move them to a different bucket where you can send them market updates, or, I don't know, some emails with some, information about the area, providing them content, and then you continue.
Are you seeing more and more text communication? Are you seeing that becoming a lot more prevalent?
I think text has been around. People just haven't been paying attention.
Right.
And so
it's more of a younger generation thing a bit, huh?
Yeah.
I've done complete transactions via text almost.
Which is interesting to me.
Yeah.
And so, you just have to understand the way people communicate. One email is only one conduit. Some people just love to have somebody talk to them, which is okay.
Yeah.
I have a bit of an accent, and so sometimes it gets interesting.
It's warming. It's like cool, that accent. It's like, oh, it's enjoyable to talk to you.
Well, now you know why they put me on the phone first.
That and I think a lot of different accents, like a southern accent goes a long way too, right? Like when people are from like Atlanta or Georgia or something, and they're, their twang kind of comes in. Like all those little accents they just, I don't know, they're different. And what's funny, so I'm from California, and I don't think I have an accent at all, right? But then when you go to, the East Coast, they're like, oh, you have an accent. I don't, and vice versa. So.
Right. And then you try to get people to guess where you're from. It's always fun.
It would take me a bit with your accent. If I had not read your bio, I would be like, where are you from?
People have asked me if I'm from Britain, which I was like, well,
yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah, because it's very different. It's not... it's not easily identifiable. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a good thing, I would imagine,
yes.
Right? Because and people are so nosy and curious, So
right.
The good thing about that is that it kind of, I think it probably drives a little bit of conversation, because
it does.
They're going to want to know. They're going to want to ask you questions like, "Where are you from?
Right.
What are you? What are you doing?"
Usually, a call, like on a good day, a call will come in about a property and ends up saying, wait a minute, where are you from? And so then, well, I'm from the Congo. Well, no way.
Yeah.
And then it goes into it, and then it's not really what I like to use as a hook, but sometimes it does hook people, right?
Yeah, use what works.
Right, and then in the end of the day, you're just having a good conversation with somebody, and then you go back into, we're here to help. I have an agent ready to meet you at a property. Anything else I can do for you? No, you've been, and so the handoff at that point becomes really natural, because, I like to think that my experience talking to people sets a good precedent.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping it does.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and then when they have the interaction with the agent and they have a great experience, that's all part of the package. And
so do you get people that come back and want to talk to you again? They're like, oh, but I started talking with Billy. I want to talk. Where's he at? What happened to him? Do you have that problem at all?
It never. I don't recall happening it since I've been doing it, which is totally fine by me, because the point is to essentially hand it over to the agent and have the agent carry that. And so, I'm just the magician in the background making it happen. Like I said,
you're like Oz from the Wizard of Oz.
That's it. And so, and to me, as long as the agent gets the due credit, right? You do a fantastic job with the clients, and they love the agent, and they write a review for the agent. This is what warms my heart. And so, everything that I do, it's because of that, right? And so, it makes the agent looks good. People are trusting the company. People are in love with C21 Redwood. That's the goal, right? We service, we delivered, and the agent gets further business from it. That's the key, And to me, the greatest compliment that I would love to receive from our agent is to call me and say, Billy, I appreciated all the leads, the prospect you sent my way. I can no longer take prospects from you because my sphere has just exploded. And so it will be a sad day, but it will be a joyful day as well, right? Because I'm like, oh, great. Now I have to find an agent to start taking, prospects.
The agents must love you.
Well,
because they don't have to work that hard, right?
I hope they do.
They can come in and they have appointments set by you, and they're all ready to go. So I hope that they're spoiling you rotten. If not, they should be.
No, look, like I said, everything is for their benefit. The cake that when I took on this position, well, let me backtrack. When I wasn't selling agent, I spent a lot of time into our flagship office in Nashburn, which is where I was practicing from. And so, as an agent, I've noticed some seasoned agent and, maybe newer agent struggling with things that to me came naturally. So like design elements, technology, and, whatever. And so I ended up being, the guy in the office that was always there to assist. Whatever that assistance looked that day. The computer wasn't working, Billy is there, you can help, whatever. And so when the opportunity came for me to do it on a larger scale, like I had to give up selling for that, which was okay. I didn't mind relinquishing that part of the business, at least to me, because what fed me in real estate was to assist people. And so when we have 400 plus agents looking to be assisted, that to me was a natural draw. And so I was drawn to it. And yeah, to this day, that's what feeds me in real estate. And so when an agent does well, if I had a small imprint on that success, that's really all I care about. The agent looks good, leads love, prospect love the agent, the company looks great. At the end of the day, that's my goal.
And so, are you happy that your father-in-law suggested you go into real estate?
Yeah, I think he's taking a lot more credit to it now. And he's a very brilliant man. I have a lot of respect for my father-in-law in that sense because he tends to see things, at times when, and this is a gift that was essentially passed on to my wife as well. They have the ability to see the best in people even when they don't.
When you can't see yourself, yeah.
Right, and so when I was reluctant about becoming an agent, like for some reason he was absolutely convinced that this was the right move for me. And I think that was also coupled with the fact that he wanted me out of his house.
So he had a motivation there. Right?
That's it. So he was motivated on two fronts, and so, but to be bluntly honest, I think he just saw potential where even myself I didn't see it, and I was so enamored with the idea of working in international relations, and that I was just ignoring what might have been the golden nugget.
What was right in front
there.
Of you, yeah.
So yeah, and so he just brought that up in front of me and said, I think you ought to really pay attention to this. And so it wasn't easy, right? So waiting for my first transaction so that way we could pay some bills. And at that time, we had to short sell our home, back in Portsmouth, Virginia, 3 hours away, living with them. And, it was just
rough.
Things were not looking good, right? And so, but even in the midst of that, he and my wife and essentially my entire family were just really supportive. And, my first transaction in real estate was a rental. I made $300, I think $24 as a commission, but the experience taught me so much. And then you moved on from that and you keep going at it, and then things just kind of opened up. And so, that's the story. And so
I think that's awesome. So how did you get involved, before we wrap up today, I want to ask you about Inman. How did you get involved with Inman? I love
that's
Inman.
Another story. Yeah. So my boss, Eddie Berenbaum, when was it, 2015, shortly after I became I started working in lead management and whatnot, he offered me essentially a chance to go to Inman. And so it said, I think you'll get, there's good training there. You'll get a lot out of the conference. And so I was, Inman San Francisco 2015 was my first Inman. And so I went there and I was brand new. And we had, in our staff, we have Tara Christensen, who's our director of training as well. And so she's been an ambassador with Inman for quite some time. And so when I landed in San Francisco last August, she was an ambassador, and they had an informal gathering of ambassadors. And they had this huge pen, huge pen on the chest that said, "Ask me anything." And she literally took that pen and put it on me. And so, I was talking to people, and then people would just ask me questions. It's like, hey, do you know where this is? It's like, look, I'm not an ambassador. That was my answer. But then, I was like, okay, maybe I can find the information for them too. And so that, that was my first Inman. It was tremendous. I met some incredible people that week, both ambassadors and non-ambassadors. And then the last day, just like any conference, Brad Inman just had this open mic.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He was like, hey, if you want to give some, feedback or whatever, here's the mic, have at it. I think the first two people were, trying to give some constructive criticisms. And I was like, am I the only one that just had like a grand time up here? And then so I honestly went to the mic and I said, look, I know everybody has something they want to say about improving the conference. I just wanted to say thank you, because I was new to this whole thing and I had the best week ever. The people I met, the connections I made have been life-changing. And so, and then they asked me if I wanted to write like a takeaway from Inman, from a newbie perspective. And so I wrote my first Inman article, giving sort of my, takeaways from that. And that essentially led to being asked to be an ambassador in New York. And then in New York, which was an interesting, experience for me, also great conference. The first time I was ever in New York was when I was evacuated from the Congo. And so I landed in New York with nothing.
Yeah.
And then several years later, here I am, an ambassador at one of the premier real estate conference in the world. And so I was like, well, the duality here is, and so I blogged about it. And then they got wind of this. Morgan Brown and Brad Inman were like, oh my gosh, would you mind sharing your story in San Francisco? And so I moved from being an ambassador to being a speaker at San Francisco. So I spoke at Inman Connect this past month.
Yes.
Which I think went well.
It went fantastic.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Thank you. And that's essentially how my involvement with Inman started. One thing I would like to point out, though, is my first Inman, when I was getting ready to go, my boss sent an email out to some people. And I didn't know this until 3 days or 2 days in the conference. Somebody would say, yeah, your boss basically told us that you were coming and that we should pay attention to you. Had I messed some stuff up? Right? And so, if I didn't behave properly, or if I didn't represent the company well, or whatever, it probably would have been a different experience for me. And so, I always try to tell people, look, you go to these conferences, just know that
somebody's watching.
That's it.
Yeah.
You're an ambassador from your company, for your brand, and just be cognizant of that. And so I didn't know that he did that. And somebody, already 2 days in the conference, they were like, "Oh yeah, your supervisor or your boss sent an email out saying, 'Hey, Billy's coming, first Inman, just give him a warm welcome and whatever.'" And so
that's what I tell my teenage boys: act as if your mama is always watching.
Oh, I love it. Yes, because the eyes of a parents, man, you can't escape it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it'll save you many times if you behave that way, right? It'll save your choices. And now with social media, it's so difficult. Everything you do is recorded, and you have to remember that no matter what. So. Right. And how old are your boys?
8 and 6.
Oh, they're so much fun.
Yeah.
Mine are 17 months apart. So they're pretty close like yours, but mine are now 20 and 21. We just moved my boys. They're down in Carlsbad, San Diego area, going to school down there. So
wow.
Yeah. So my children are now all grown and gone. So enjoy them, because that age is so much fun. I mean, they're just a blast. So
I still miss the part when, they didn't really, you had to guess what they wanted, and now they're voicing their opinion, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
When did you start talking?
Yeah, who's the parent here?
Yeah. Why are you giving me advice?
Oh, trust me, it gets way worse before it gets better. And then all of a sudden one day they're like, "Oh, now I get it, Mom. Now I get what you were saying." Now,
Yes,
it takes a while, but eventually they come back around.
Indeed, that was me when we had our first son. I literally called my mom and I was like, "I'm so sorry for anything that I've done as a kid." And she was like, "I wonder why you would say that." Because now I know.
You'll be saying that way more when they become teenagers. You'll be like, "Mom, I'm sorry. Please take the hoax off me. Please."
That's it.
Yeah, that's the mother's curse, right? May you have a child just like you.
Yeah. Well, it's in the blood, I think.
Well, Billy, this has been such a great conversation, and I know there are so many people out there who need to really understand the importance of, following up with leads and making those calls. And I love what you said about how you're a magician and a matchmaker. That's just so valuable.
I think you're welcome. And the one thing, you just have to think of them as people, not so much as numbers and,
yes.
Don't think of them as just another transaction. Think of them as generally people asking.
Absolutely.
And I think you approach, it doesn't matter how many calls you make, how many, what the price point is. You just approach it, $1 million lead or prospect is the same as a $200,000 prospect. They all, in the end of the day, they're all looking for the same thing.
Absolutely.
They're looking for assistance. And so I don't treat one differently than the other. That's just the way I approach it. And so people, not leads, in my opinion.
I love that.
And that makes all the difference.
Yeah, I think that's really the key to today's conversation. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. This has been a wonderful conversation. And,
you're most welcome.
And for all of our guests and listeners out there, be sure to tune in to Real Estate Real World. Subscribe over on iTunes, and be sure to leave a great review. Your reviews help push us up in the ratings. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you so much, Billy, for this great conversation and for doing everything that you do in the real estate industry. We are incredibly blessed to be in an amazing industry. And every time I talk to somebody like you, I'm reminded of how great it is. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Billy. Everyone go out there and make it a great day.
Thank you for joining us today on Real Estate Real World, where we talk with masters and leaders in real estate and beyond on how we can raise the bar in our industry. Please subscribe over on iTunes. And while you're there, be sure to give us a review. Your reviews encourage us and help others find our podcast. For show notes and hot topics on what's going on right now in our real estate industry, hop on over to www.realestaterealworld.com and add your name to our email. Thanks again for listening. And go out there. Be a part of the elite masterclass in raising the bar on the real estate industry.